A great southern man has told Nine News an amazing story today. How he was swept away by a tornado while working on a property. Darcy Clode's ute flipped by the force of Mother Nature as she unleashed on Franklin River.
A little mini tornado out there. It's pretty cool.
An incredible sight that quickly turns dangerous. Darcy Clode was fencing on a farm in Franklin River when the storm hit.
I looked again about 15 seconds later and it was another 300 metres closer to me and there was a tree flying in the air, so I thought, well, I better seek refuge back to my ute.
The father of two directly in the firing line of a tornado.
In a split second it had taken me, dragged me across the ground into a fence.
Pelted by rocks and debris, his ute flipped onto its roof. His dog inside, but thankfully okay. The tractor damaged, windows shattered, a path of trees flattened.
Roof torn off, cab completely blown apart.
It definitely wasn't slow moving, moving through fairly quickly, and it's probably only lasted a few minutes.
The chances of being caught up in a storm like this in WA are incredibly rare. Our state seeing on average just 5 tornadoes each year during the cold season. Darcy's certainly left with a remarkable story to tell.
You're surrounded by thousands of hectares and it just so happened that I was in the path of it, so yeah, I'd say very little chance of it happening again.
Wild weather lashing the southern part of the state yesterday afternoon. Huge hailstones pelting down in Wagen. Oh my God! The first burst of winter now easing, but another cold front is expected on Tuesday. Sarah Smith, 9 News.
A terrible scene in Surrey Hills this afternoon. A man hit and killed by the light rail moments after it took off from Devonshire Street. Witnesses have told police he appeared to stumble onto the platform, then cross between 2 carriages when he was struck.
An all-hands-on emergency in Surrey Hills. Paramedics and police rescue working to save the life of a 40-year-old man after he was struck by the light rail. Witnesses saw him at the Devonshire Street stop just after 1 this afternoon. Moments later, they heard screams.
I was standing there, I seen him at the tram, and then I looked away and looked back, he's under the tram.
I could hear all the sirens, and I look out my living room window and see all the coppers. I knew something had gone on.
Police were able to perform an operation where we lifted the carriage up and extricate that male onto the platform. Emergency services provided medical care, but unfortunately that male was pronounced deceased.
Police say CCTV shows the man attempting to cross between 2 carriages before the tram took off again. Vision here showing the moment the light rail took off before coming to a halt just seconds later. You can see a bystander on the other side of the tracks turn his head as he hears the screams. Police then rushing to the scene. The driver of the light rail was taken to hospital for mandatory testing and passengers were ushered away. 9 News understands the man lives locally and his family is still yet to be notified. Witnesses say they saw him wearing high-vis and stumbling slightly as he made his way to the platform before attempting to cross. The light rail network was brought to a halt for 3 hours as Transport for New South Wales began a review of the incident.
I think it is important to understand that there are warning signs, but we want to make sure that everything was done in the correct way.
Erin Ramsey.
As cholera cases rise sharply across the continent, its leaders say it's essential that Africa steps up production of its own vaccines. The World Health Organization says that so far this year, Africa has reported 2/3 of all cases worldwide and 99% of cholera-related deaths. Its Director General, Tedros Ghebreyesus, was speaking on Wednesday at a virtual emergency summit organised by the Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention. He said health officials also need to optimise the use of existing supplies through earlier detection and more efficient vaccination campaigns. The Africa CDC says that more than 90% of vaccines, medicines, medical tests and other essential health supplies used across the continent are imported, leaving it vulnerable to global trade tensions, geopolitical disruption and logistical delays. The waterborne bacterial disease causes severe diarrhea and dehydration. Left untreated, it can be fatal in a matter of hours.
Japan is now facing a population crisis. The annual number of babies born in the country has fallen below 700,000 for the first time. Last year, reported births sank to about 1/4 of the yearly number during the baby boomer generation. Government officials say the decline comes about 15 years earlier than predicted. The ministry also says the total fertility rate fell to a record low of 1.15. Experts say one reason it's happening is that fewer people are getting married.
Now it appears that a growing number of Japanese in their 20s are registering with matchmaking agencies. This 28-year-old woman visited an agency in Tokyo. She says she wants to keep working while raising a child.
I'm just repeating the cycle of commuting to work and returning home on weekdays. I have few opportunities to meet men.
In 2024, the yearly number of couples who married dropped by more than 150,000 from a decade earlier. Local governments are trying to change that. Ehime Prefecture in western Japan launched a marriage support project. So far, it's helped more than 1,600 couples tie the knot. It has utilized a matching computer program powered by artificial intelligence.
The program uses big data to suggest the best prospective partners.
Project volunteers stay in contact with people who get matched up and share advice on how they can develop their relationships.
We're now joined by NHK World's Sugimoto Orie to help us shed some light on this issue. Orie, it seems that many young Japanese want to get married but are struggling to do so. What's making it so tough for them?
Yes, we have to look at their financial situation. Unstable employment, slow wage growth, costly housing and soaring prices are making people feel that marriage and kids are too expensive. Gender inequality in work and raising children is apparently another factor. Experts point out that more and more couples hope to have double incomes, but that's constrained by the conventional idea that men should work and earn enough to support their families. Men working long hours is still the basic style at many Japanese companies, so they don't have enough time to take care of children. And running the household and spending more hours raising children can eventually force women to give up their jobs.
Well, the decreasing total fertility rate and shrinking population isn't just a challenge for Japan. What other countries are grappling with these issues?
South Korea and China are also seeing a rapidly decreasing fertility rate. The World Bank says that in 2023, South Korea's rate hit 0.72. That's among the lowest in the world. And China marked 1.0. To find out more, I spoke with Professor Mizoguchi Yuki at Niigata University. He's an expert on Asia's population decline. He says what Japan, South Korea, and China share is that marriage and raising children is becoming too expensive for their young people.
Japan, China, and South Korea have placed most of the burden of social reproduction on families. That is, social welfare mostly relying on families. Now economic growth is over, and families only have to bear the burden. So the cost-effectiveness of marriage has deteriorated.
Mizoguchi says that in South Korea, the conventional lifetime employment for men was destroyed after the 1990s. He says young women have started getting jobs, but the traditional idea that they should stay home and support men is still deeply embedded in society. He says this discourages women from thinking they can work and get married. In China, Mizoguchi cites high housing costs in urban areas like Beijing and Shanghai. He says that puts too much of a burden on young couples. He suggests that the government could help by making housing more affordable.
Oria, what about Japan? What's being done here?
The Japanese government has recently worked out a major policy to support childcare. It includes an allowance for more households with children and offering more facilities like nurseries. It's also important to get rid of long work hours and gender inequality. Mizoguchi says he's afraid that someday the populations of East Asian countries could hit zero, also reducing the economy and society to nothing. The decline is occurring quietly but stably. The government and the business sector must take actions now to change it.
Thank you, Odie, for that analysis.
The Chrome Detention Center joining together this morning for a moving display. Check out this from Sky 10. Those inmates who are all dressed in white joining together outside of the athletic field there to form a message reading SOS. We're told the goal this morning was to raise public awareness about what they call poor conditions inside.
And Iran continues to ramp up its underground warfare capabilities. During a visit to a military base in central Iran, the commander of the Iranian army's ground force said the country has drawn up detailed plans for 5 new missile bases. Adding, these new bases are already being organized. He, however, did not disclose the locations or specific details about these 5 bases, but the general made it clear the army ground force stands ready to deliver a crushing response to any threat, anytime, any place, and at any level. This move marks another step in Tehran's increasing investment in asymmetric warfare and hardened underground defense infrastructure. But what exactly are Iran's missile cities all about? These are heavily fortified underground military facilities that store, maintain, and can launch short, medium, and intermediate range ballistic missiles. In fact, they form the backbone of the country's missile strategy, designed specifically to protect key assets from detection or destruction during conflict. Though the number of these facilities remains a secret, estimates suggesting that dozens are dug into Iran's western mountains, some as deep as 500 meters underground. In fact, these locations offer protection against airstrikes and from even bunker-busting bombs. According to Tehran, given the excavation footprint and logistical activity, such cities could be vulnerable to modern satellite and intelligence technology. The building of the 5 new missile bases is aligned with Iran's defensive doctrine, prioritizing survivability of its arsenal, especially from aerial threats. Since the start of this year, in fact, Iran has showcased its missile cities on several occasions. Just last month itself, the IRGC unveiled Iran's first underground drone base, housing hundreds of homegrown UAVs, including the Mohajer-6, a stealth drone equipped with radar evading technology and anti-jamming systems. The facility also hosts reconnaissance drones, loitering munitions, and intelligence gathering UAVs. Back in March, Iran unveiled its largest underground missile city at an undisclosed location. Footage from the site showed vast stockpiles of ballistic and cruise missiles. And Iran has been showcasing its military prowess, especially over the past few months, amid the ongoing nuclear talks with the US over Tehran's nuclear program. Despite 5 rounds of negotiations, there has been no breakthrough, with uranium enrichment remaining a major point of contention. In a nationally telecast address, the Iranian Supreme Leader has said Iran does not need a green light from Washington or any other foreign power on its domestic nuclear activities. While earlier this week itself, US President Donald Trump said his administration would not allow any enrichment.
Europe is scrambling to increase its defense expenditure, but for most of the NATO countries, the road to reaching the US president's 5% GDP limit seems tough. NATO defense ministers assembled in Brussels ahead of the Hague summit later this month. While there is broad agreement on increasing defense spending of all the NATO countries, they feel that reaching the goal of spending 5% of the GDP is tough. Meanwhile, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is pushing hard on NATO to commit to 5% defense spending.
From France to Germany, to the Baltics, to the Nordic countries, to Poland, to Greece, to Hungary, to so many more, the commitment is there. 5% on defense spending. When you consider the threats that we face, the urgency in the world, it's critical. We don't need more flags. We need more fighting formations. We don't need more conferences. We need more capabilities. Hard power.
NATO chief Mark Rutte said that NATO members should reach the 5% goal by 2032. Several NATO member states believe that it will be too late by then.
So first of all, defense investment pledge 2032 should be out of question. It's definitely too late. If we are able to do simple maths and we talk about Russia's ability to be ready, well, possibly to test NATO in just a few years, possibly 27, 28, 29, so 2032 is, well, most likely after the war. So we cannot talk about that.
So far, not a single NATO country spends 5% of the GDP on defense. Most countries are spending lower than 3%. Among the 32 NATO members, Poland spends the most, that is 4% of its GDP. Only Estonia and Lithuania have so far committed to spending 5% of the GDP on defense. But if all the 32 members are to agree to 5%, the question now is, where will the money come from? In the post-Cold War era, NATO countries in Europe redirected the defense spending to social welfare. Cutting through this peace dividend will mean less spending on social welfare, and this at a time when most countries are facing economic hardships. In the most recent elections in countries across Europe, the cost of living crisis has been the top priority, the top election issue. Several European countries are already dealing with EU-skeptic political movements. This, coupled with tariff war and the war in Ukraine, can make the path to 5% more difficult for Europe. The German economy is shrinking. The newly elected government, headed by Friedrich Merz, has announced a $567 billion investment plan for the ailing infrastructure over the next 12 years. Although it has increased defense spending under Merz, the country's defense minister has said that the United States' 5% demand for the NATO countries is unrealistic. The situation in Spain is also not inspiring. Pedro Sanchez's government will need to spend around 4 billion euros more a year to reach even 2% defense target. The Belgian government aims to accelerate defense spending by $4.2 billion in the coming months, and this will take the country's defense spending to 2% of the GDP. That is also far from the Trump's proposal of 5%. The NATO summit is slated to take place on the 25th of this month. Some 45 heads of state are expected to attend it. It will rather be interesting to see how governments across the continent strike a balance between rising political pressure and increasing defense spending. Donald Trump has done it again. 7 years after implementing a travel ban on some countries, the US president has passed another travel ban that was spurred by an attack on a Jewish demonstration in Colorado. Authorities have claimed the suspect was in the country illegally. The ban, which strongly resembles a similar measure taken in his first presidency, targets nationals of 12 countries, namely Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan and Yemen. The White House said the ban will go into effect on June 9th. Trump also imposed a partial ban on travelers from 7 countries, which includes Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan and Venezuela.
Today, I am signing a new executive order placing travel restrictions on countries including Yemen, Somalia, Haiti, Libya, and numerous others. The strength of the restrictions we're applying depends on the severity of the threat posed. The list is subject to revision based on whether material improvements are made And likewise, new countries can be added as threats emerge around the world.
Demonstrations had erupted back in 2017 when Trump issued a similar travel ban during his first presidential term. In his ongoing term, Trump has said the ban 7 years ago had stopped the U.S. from suffering terror attacks. But after his latest ban, reactions from within the country and the nation's band are pouring in. Many are not happy with this move and call Trump ignorant. Listen in.
We have problems here. Obviously, it has a negative impact. Since 3 years, we've been facing problems, and these kind of sanctions can increase the problems. It has an overall psychological impact on Afghanistan.
This decision, Trump has previously made this decision. It will not have an effect, one way or the other. Firstly, he will not be able to stop terrorist acts in this way, as this requires the understanding of culture, security, and you need to know the causes, to address the causes and know how to treat these causes, not by undertaking blind decisions like this as if you are shutting down your home.
Quite frankly, it's not unexpected because, he did it the first time, so it's not unrealistic that he'll do it again. But I think the countries that have been banned, I don't know what kind of threat they pose to the United States. Specifically countries like Sudan, Yemen, and Congo, for example. I don't know what they have to do with the national security of the United States.
We had a very good talk, and we've straightened out any complexity. It's very complex stuff, and we straightened it out. The agreement was we're going to have Scott and Howard and Jameson will be going and meeting with their top people and continue it forward. But no, I think we have everything. I think we're in very good shape with China and the trade deal.
Mr. President, speaking of ending wars, you were very critical of Vladimir Putin a couple of days ago. What kind of play is he playing from your perspective? What are his
Look, he got hit. He's been doing hitting, so I understand it. But he got hit hard, and I don't think he's playing games. I think I've always said he wanted the whole thing. I thought he wanted the entire everything having to do with Ukraine. That's something that would have never happened if I were president. The election was rigged. I didn't get to be president, but I got to be president now. And I think it's a much more important presidency. Other than a couple of things like that, the war would have never happened. The war with Ukraine, with Putin, would have never happened, ever, not even a chance. And it didn't happen for 4 years. And it wasn't thought of. I used to talk to him about Ukraine a lot. It was the apple of his eye, but he would have never done what he did. And I think mistakes were made by him, but I think mistakes were made by other people. The president should have never allowed that war. Biden should have never allowed that war to happen. If you had the right guy in here, that war would have never happened. Israel would have never happened with Hamas. that would have never happened. The attack on Israel would have never happened because Iran was broke. They had no money. They had no money to give to Hamas or Hezbollah or anybody else. And all of that would have never happened. Inflation wouldn't have happened. It was caused mostly by energy. And the Biden administration messed up my great energy policy. We were down into the 190 a gallon. And it would have never happened. It was caused by energy and their bad spending on the Green New Scam and other things that they spent on. But all of those things would have never happened. But maybe most importantly, the war, Chancellor, with Russia would never have happened with Ukraine. It was something that would have, you know, I dealt with Putin a lot. There was no chance, zero. And, you know, a lot of people say, how do you know? For 4 years it didn't happen. There was never a chance of it happening. And he understood the consequences. Now, it's a shame. I mean, when you see all of those people, they came out with a report today that that millions of people have died, much more than people thought. And I've been saying that for a long time. The amount of death in that war is far greater than the news has been reporting, or than, frankly, that either side has been reporting. It's a very sad thing. And I can tell you, just speaking for the Chancellor, because we speak about it, he feels the same way. He wants to see it ended. Would you like to say something?
Absolutely. And I'm here, Mr. President, to talk with you later on how we could contribute to that goal. And we all are looking for measures and for instruments to bring this terrible war to an end. And may I remind you that we are having June 6th tomorrow. This is D-Day anniversary, when the Americans once ended a war in Europe. And I think this is in your hand in specific, in ours.
That was not a pleasant day for you?
No, that was not a pleasant day.
This was not a great day.
In the long run, Mr. President, this was the liberation of my country from Nazi dictatorship.
That's true. That's true.
And we know what we owe you. But this is the reason why I'm saying that America is again in a very strong position to do something on this war and ending this war. So let's talk about what we can do jointly, and we are ready to do what we can. And you know that we gave support to Ukraine, and that we are looking for more pressure on Russia. The European Union did, and we should talk about
These
that.
days after the Ukrainian drone attacks hit the Russian bomber fleets and border regions, a chilling echo from the Cold War has crackled to life. The Moscow's top-secret doomsday radio has suddenly gone active, transmitting bizarre coded messages. In military circles, this isn't just some noise, it's actually quite clearly a signal, possibly even a warning. But what does it all mean? Take a look at this report.
Russia is a very secretive country. The veil of secrecy, a legacy of the Soviet era, hides many secretive truths. Right now, tensions are peaking. Moscow is readying for an unprecedented assault on its neighbor. For the audacious Operation Spiderweb, a fleet of Russia's prized nuclear bombers reduced to rubble. Now, a chilling echo from the Cold War crackles to life. The Russian radio station UVB-76 is broadcasting new coded messages. Such activity is unusual. The system was silent for months. Usually the radio is emitting its signature buzz. It only speaks when something big is brewing. This week, it spoke, loud and clear, with dozens of cryptic codes in a single day. Right after the Istanbul peace talks collapsed, right after Ukraine struck deep inside Russia, right after Putin hinted there will be no talks with terrorists. No one outside the Kremlin truly knows what UVB-76 is for. But military analysts believe it's tied to Russia's nuclear or retaliatory command systems. possibly the legendary dead hand system designed to ensure a massive strike even if Moscow's command and control systems are destroyed. While other experts believe UVV-76 broadcast codes are to alert or test hidden units, a signal that sleeper units or secondary systems should prepare. This isn't science fiction, it's Cold War reality reactivated. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
NATO, meanwhile, is flexing its military muscle, and it's doing on land, air and sea. A massive 2-week-long naval exercise is kicked off in the strategically crucial Baltic Sea, with ships setting sail from the German port of Rostock this morning. And amongst them are Germany's corvette Magdeburg and France's minesweeper Vulcan. The drill that's been dubbed the Baltopsis is led by the United States and brings together a powerful force of 50 warships, 25 aircraft and over 9,000 troops from 17 different nations. The message that NATO is trying to send is pretty clear. Its presence in the region is strong and unified, especially with Russia continuing its war against Ukraine. Now, Moscow has called it a provocation, even as its own fleet conducts drills in the same waters. Meanwhile, on land and air, the final phase of NATO's immediate response 25 is underway in northeastern Greece. The high-intensity live-fire exercises near Xanthi city featured AH-64 Apache helicopters and Leopard 2 main battle tanks in action. Now, more than 2,500 troops from the United States, NATO allies and regional partners who joined this phase, while the wider drill spans 8 countries and involves over 12,000 personnel.
The world can be a dangerous place, but when we're working together in exercises like Immediate Response 25, we become better because we know each other, we know each other's equipment, we know how it operates, and we learn together to make things better.
From Bulgaria to North Macedonia, the forces are training in everything from rapid deployments and also river crossings to cyber defense and combined operations. As tensions in Europe persist, NATO sends a resounding signal of readiness and unity, showcasing the alliance's readiness and interoperability. The American President Donald Trump recently reignited the debate over the alliance commitments, warning that countries falling behind on defense spending may not be guaranteed American protection.
No sé de quién es esta mujer.